All right, so I mentioned a second ago that your review is going to be next week. There are a number of representation methods that should be present in your presentation. So I am not going to prescribe whether or not it's going to appear on your boards or in your PowerPoint presentation. I'm not sure how that format pans out for you guys, but these items must be present in your design review next week. The weather analysis diagrams, it's basically what you presented at the midterm review that we had with Iggy and I and all of you previous to now. You should respond to the criticism that you got from us at that time. For instance, if we said that your color use was weak or unclear, you should change your colors in order to accommodate, the critique that you had before. Otherwise, you're not doing what you should be doing. That kind of stuff. So the weather analysis diagrams, feel free to use either the catalog format or the overlay format. And if you forget what that means, the catalog format was basically breaking it out into your grid of column 1 was your raw analysis, column 2 was your conclusion of that about that analysis, and column 3 was your solution to the conclusion that you came to. So you could also show that in the full-on overlaid format if that's what works well for you and the way that you've outlined it. That's item 1. Item 2 is the sectional explorations. So it was another requirement that I had for the previous review, that you get to a point where you take your first solution attempt and you analyze it in a cross-sectional environment. So basically, even if you didn't have your design done, you didn't have any kind of massing, you grafted on some kind of massing in order to study the solutions that you've come to and what it looks like in a cross-sectional environment across the site. If you don't recall specifically what that was, let me quickly pull it up. Happens to be featured on the channel. So let's see, videos. Here we go. So that would be these cross sections right here. So you should get to a point where you've developed one of those, and so you'll see what I've written up here is that it has sorry. So that's the axonometric section. It has the rendered underlay, it has the vector overlay, and it should have a diagrammatic overlay as well. You only need one of those, and it should be of your design project. So at this point, it's no longer just an exploration where you make up the form. It should be your actual building cut into a cross-section and shown axonometrically and analytically. Are there any questions about that one? Okay, so then the other part of your sectional explorations is your 2D orthographic drawings. So that's essentially the sun angle diagrams that we did. If you wanted to show that way, and I know that Iggy probably should be requiring a few views from you for this, maybe specifically, maybe not so much, but if I go back to the videos that we did way back in the beginning of this class, well, towards the beginning of this class, these sun angle diagrams should be present in some form or fashion. It doesn't have to be the exact format that we have here. Oh, that's not going to work. Skip, skip, skip. So not all of your projects are going to look exactly like this, but you should have your sun angles studied here, or if you're doing passive cooling, you should be showing how passive cooling strategies are passing through your building in a non-rendered, non-axonometric way. Okay. However many of those are necessary to communicate the number of conclusions you come to in your item number 1, weather analysis diagrams, you should have that many 2D orthographic sections presented. Any questions about that one?
That means that could represent sun, like for heating solutions, or also for passive cooling or other diagrams, right?
Yep. Yeah, passive cooling, your sun angles for heating or cooling. The earth sheltering, it would be one of them. If you're doing any kind of like misting systems, I saw a number of you guys were studying that. Active air circulation, that kind of stuff would be best suited for that kind of diagram. Okay, and then item number 3, the radiation analysis. So that is what we did more recently. Oh, I closed it, didn't I? Let's see. Well, I think you guys know what I'm referring to, right? The radiation analysis that had the orthographic projection that showed it in elevation. Okay, so we're not just doing the radiation analysis and then showing it from an aerial. We're actually looking at the elevation with a graphic underlay that shows all of your, if you did blue to red, you'd have all of your blues, yellows, greens, and reds, and all that other stuff, oranges. And then you would show a vector overlay of your building, your design, and what the result is for radiation at that point, right? So we're doing that. I believe what we studied was, actually I'm going to modify this just real quick. I'm going to say for the summer and winter solstice. Okay, just to be more specific. Okay, so it's not annually, it's a specific time we're going to study the summer and winter solstice. No questions about that? Okay, and then moving on, the last one is the actual sun study. So what Iggy and I were just talking about before we got started here, a little bit late, sorry, but we were trying to delineate what the requirements are going to be and how you guys should do it in a very clean way. So the sun study is essentially the camera angle definition, where you can position your model along the sun path and then set the camera to be a particular direction. So what we're going to briefly talk about here today is how to lock down your camera angles at a particular depth in the field, so that if you need to reference it or go back and change it, you're always going to have the same depth, and it won't look like you're sometimes zoomed in or sometimes zoomed out, that kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of control tips for that. And what I've outlined in this document is that they should all be formatted to suit the entire set, which we'll go over in a moment. But the 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after sunrise, 2 hours after sunrise, your noon or solar noon, and then 2 hours before sunset, and then 30 minutes before sunset for the summer and winter solstice only. Okay, so I know that document that you used for the previous project had a bunch of times throughout the year. We're just doing summer and winter solstice. So you'll have 2 sets. And then also we're going to look at, and I'm just going to briefly, where did I put it? There we go. We're also going to look at just exporting an east. Well, so we're going to look at exporting east, south, west, and a top view of this drawing, and just getting it to be formatted pretty uniformly. Okay? So how do you all feel about that?
It's good, but a lot.
It is a lot. So I'm going to help you guys out here. The ones that I'm more concerned with, I'm going to require for Thursday. And then the ones that I'm less concerned with, I'm going to require for Tuesday. I'm not supposed to be telling you this, but it seems like your Tuesday review might get pushed back to Thursday. I'm not supposed to be telling you this, but I am, just because in 12 hours time you're going to hear it from Iggy tomorrow. So yeah, so the ones that I'm requiring specifically for Thursday are going to be your weather analysis diagrams, and at least one set of your sun study diagrams, and I want to see at least one of your radiation analysis layouts, I guess you would call it. Is that part clear?
Do you want it just all like 11 by 17s, or do you want it in actual?
I don't think you need to print it, so as long as you've got it on screen, we'll probably just pop it up here and talk about it up here. I want to save you guys money, especially right before a review when you're going to have to print everything.
The sun study part, we're doing it right now.
Yeah, I already showed you how to do it, sort of, kind of, and you were just going to, screen capture it, but I'm going to now go through two options, how to do it with a little bit more control and screen capturing. And then I'm also going to show you how do you export it, bringing it into either AutoCAD or Illustrator, so that if you want to take it that step further, you can clean it up, make it look really good, so that you can format it well.
But the one that you need for Thursday.
It's up to you. I just need to see it. I need to see how your control is. I would urge you to take it to Illustrator or AutoCAD and get it, formatted with exactly the same types of lines that you're going to be using for the rest of your presentation as well.
And all of that should be with our design?
With your design, yes, absolutely. So unfortunately, with the exception of your raw data for your weather analysis, there's probably very little that you can just pull from your old resources. Maybe your analysis language on top of that weather data. The rest of it is going to have to be redone, but it's really just a mimic of what you've already done. Okay, so for those of you who have not done or are not doing a design project, I'll probably just give you by the end of class today a project to do it for. Okay.
And all of this is supposed to be on our presentation board, or like which?
Yeah, so that part's up to you because I don't know what instructions you have for your design deliverables. I just know that Iggy agrees with me that these items need to be included in the presentation. So whether or not you do it in your PowerPoint or if you do it on the board, that part's up to you and what you know of your design requirements. Okay? I will say this though. There are certain things that I think are going to go much better in a PowerPoint and much better on the board if it's possible for you, but don't quote me because I'm not sure if it is. For example, the weather analysis diagrams. I'm not sure if they're going to read better on the board or on PowerPoint. I'd say if you're limited in size for how much paper space you can take, then I would put it on your PowerPoint. If you have a lot of space that you can print it on, then it's probably better to have it on a board. The sectional explorations, you probably would want to have your two-dimensional drawings maybe on the board, definitely. But you might be able to get away with putting the axonometric in your PowerPoint. It might not be necessary to actually print that one out.
Well, I'm a little confused because we need a presentation board and a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So, like, part of me is like, how do I tie my PowerPoint into the presentation? And like, I'm thinking of a PowerPoint, I'm like, well, I can just probably put on my stuff on my PowerPoint. I'm just kind of confused on like, how do I tie my presentation board to my PowerPoint?
So, well, I don't know what instructions you've been given, but if you were to ask me how to tie the two of them together, I would just make sure everything is included on the boards and everything is included in the PowerPoint.
Really?
And as I flip through the PowerPoint, it's really just a tool for blowing things up, making it bigger.
Oh, I see. So it's like it's on the presentation board, but you just use the,
Yeah.
See what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I would have my entire, and you know that I use my layout as my format for presentation, right? So I'll kind of walk through a certain point. I might shuffle it up, but I'll know that I need to go from board 1 to board 4 to board 2 to board 3. And then I'll use all of that, information and pick the ones that I know are too small on the board, or I might be able to include more information about it in the PowerPoint. And so when I get to that, I flip the PowerPoint to it. For instance, if the, let's say the radiation analysis, right? They're kind of too long and linear and it's too small on the board. But maybe you want to blow it up and show it one view at a time in the PowerPoint, right? And then you can really get down and see, maybe if I'm standing 5 feet away from the board, I can't quite see how little sun is actually getting to your glazing. And, there are thin slices of blue that don't read well from that far away. I pop it up and you're like, oh yeah, I see all that blue, right? It's not hot on the glazing. It's actually cool.
Well, I guess that's my question. Like, even if you can't really see it on the board, does it even matter to have it there?
Certain things, yeah. So that's a very good point. In most cases, I'd say no. If you can't read it on the board, then it's probably not worth putting there. But if it relates directly to something right next to it, then you probably need it. Even if you can't see it, you probably should have it there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense because you could refer to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, you know, if you're like, oh, okay, so I've got this on board 1, this on board 4, this on board 2, this on board 3, and look at them in relation to one another all the way across the presentation. And then it's like, let's look at it in a, you know, larger format here so that you can really see the detail. And you flip through the detail. That kind of stuff. That's just a suggestion. I have no idea whether or not Iggy is restricting you from that. So take it with a grain of salt. Iggy's...
We don't know until tomorrow.
What's that?
We don't know until
Oh, you don't know. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, you know, Iggy's instructions are going to supersede mine in all cases. Okay. Probably. I don't know. You might want to be a rebel if you like mine better, but. Okay, so that's it for this. Are there any other questions about this right now before I move into showing you how to format the Sun Studies? Okay.